So one mistake I've seen people make in a divorce where there are significant assets is to try to hide assets. To hide assets as though their spouse has no knowledge of them, as though there's no paper trails, etc. And if you've got that rare eagle asset like that, well, maybe you can hide it. But I'm here to tell you that it's most often a mistake. I've represented people who tried to hide assets, and I've represented spouses who had to go find assets that their spouse hid. 99 out of 100 times, the assets are found. And then guess what? You got a judge mad at you for hiding stuff. And the biggest risk from that is that the judge would decide to just award that whole entire asset to the other side just to punish you as part of a just and right division of the estate because you tried to hide it and pretend it doesn't exist. Hiding assets is a mistake in a divorce. If you've got significant assets in a divorce, you probably got some pretty darn good advice along the way on how to compile those assets. One of the big mistakes I see people make in an asset-driven divorce is that they all of a sudden decide to change horses and go get other financial advice to try to steer through and protect in the divorce. And quite often, it's simply bad advice. And my client winds up in a worse position than he would have been if he'd have just stayed doing things the way he did. Be very careful about the advice that you take on in an asset-driven divorce. A huge mistake that people make with asset-driven divorces is to naturally assume that because we're dividing everything, there's going to be a huge tax consequence, huge tax penalties, all these tax outcomes, and they start making knee-jerk reactions ahead of time. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of vehicles involved in transferring money in a divorce that keep it from being taxable. So don't always assume that there's going to be a tax hit. Don't make moves to avoid tax hits until you know exactly what those tax hits are likely going to be. It's hard to get that information from lay people. You've got to find people to advise you who've been through it before, who've guided clients through it before, who know how to navigate those waters. So there's two mistakes I see people make in an asset-driven divorce, and they're mirror image of each other. The first one is being so worked up about protecting the emotions in the divorce that we ignore the financial implications in a divorce. And that's obviously no good because you can try to protect these emotional interests, but if you ignore the financial interests, what's going to happen to you on the other side of that divorce? You got to have a balanced picture. And the other side of that coin is the person who's so financially driven that that's all they're paying attention to is every penny in the divorce, and they're completely ignoring the emotional relationships in this. If you've got kids, these are people who just focus on the dollars and don't think about the kids, or they ignore the fact that, hey, one day down the road, we might be passing a grandbaby between ourselves in a hospital room. Well, if that's where your life was with the money, then that's going to be a real hard moment in the future. You got to have balance of both if you're going to go through an asset-driven divorce. These are just a few of the many mistakes that people make in asset-driven divorces. If you've got a question about your divorce, give us a call. We'd love to give you a free consultation and give you some great advice.